This hour of the Costa Report is brought to you by IBM. Big data at the speed of business.
Welcome to the Costa Report. I'm Rebecca Costa, and thank you for joining me for another 2 hours of straight talk radio. Let me take a moment to welcome members of our armed forces who are tuning in today from remote outposts around the world. Thank you for being with us. In just a moment, the founder of the world's largest private military, Blackwater USA, will be joining us. Though there's no question whether Blackwater has played an important role in U.S. security, Erik Prince continues to be one of our nation's most controversial figures, and he's here today to separate fact from fiction and help us understand why a private military is necessary. But before he joins us, as is my custom each week, let me tell you a little about his background. Erik Dean Prince was born in Holland, Michigan, the youngest of 4 children. His father was an entrepreneur who began as a salesman and eventually founded the successful Prince Machine Corporation. The company became a billion-dollar supplier to the automotive industry thanks to the elder Prince's adventurous spirit. Following high school, Erik attended the Naval Academy for a short period before enrolling in Hillsdale College, where he received his degree in economics. While in college, Prince was a volunteer firefighter, a cold water diver for the Sheriff's Department, and later an emergency technician. During these formative years, Prince was already balancing his penchant for business with his love of being on the front lines, where quick reactions and thinking were prized above all else. In 1990, Prince accepted a White House internship under George W. Bush, and following this assignment, he interned for Congressman Dana Rohrabacher. Then in 92, he was commissioned as an officer in the U.S. Navy. He qualified as a Navy SEAL and joined the SEAL Team 8, which sent him to Haiti, the Middle East, the Balkans, and other hot spots. But soon Prince was ready to strike out on his own. It was impossible to ignore the growing need for a state-of-the-art training facility for U.S. Special Operations. So, following a short hiatus to tend to his family, Prince bought 6,000 acres in North Carolina and set up a facility called Blackwater. And that should have been that. But as budget cuts began to collide with new threats to the United States, the demand for highly trained security personnel exploded. In short order, Blackwater became the State Department's largest security provider. And from 2001 to 2010, the CIA awarded over $600 million in contracts to the company. Then came civilian casualties in Iraq, and soon, many of the same politicians Blackwater had protected, and in some cases saved, were calling for investigations. In 2010, Prince stepped down from Blackwater. Today, Mr. Prince operates a private equity firm called Frontier Resource Group and oversees his family's charitable foundation. And in 2013, he released a tell-all book about Blackwater, which we're going to learn more about in today's program. It's my pleasure to welcome to the Costa Report former U.S. Navy SEAL and founder of Blackwater, Mr. Erik Prince. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
If it's okay with you, I'd like to open the show with the most basic question that I think our audience has on their mind. Why do we need a private military?
Well, the private sector has played a role in American national security really since the founding of the country. If you look back to guys like John Smith or Miles Standish, people that helped build the Plymouth or Massachusetts Bay or Virginia colonies, they were professional soldiers that were hired by then private companies to come and protect the colony. And if you think about the founding of the Continental Army, guys like, there's statues of them right across the street from the White House. Statues of Lafayette, Rochambeau, von Steuben, Kosciuszko, professional military officers, contractors, private citizens from a foreign country, mercenaries, if you will, that even came and built the Continental Army. So there has always been a role for the private sector in supporting national security in America, and there always will be. And the private citizens operating in the battle space is really as old as warfare itself.
So what we're saying is private.
This is not a new thing at all.
This is not new. This has been going on dating back to George Washington, who had to hire soldiers to buttress our military.
Sure. I mean, even America's first covert action overseas was the Barbary Pirates, and you had terrible problem with Americans being taken off their ships, held for hostage. In that case, you had a U.S. warship that was surrendered, and you had 340 sailors held hostage by the pirates in Tripoli. The ransom demand exceeded the defense budget that year. So Jefferson was in a bit of a pickle, and he turned to a former Army officer named William Eaton, who took 8 Marines and about 90 contracted mercenaries, French, Greek, and Italian, and they marched all the way from Alexandria, Egypt, all the way into Libya, conquered a garrison 10 times their size, and put enough pressure on the pirates to release the Americans held hostage. So, again, the Marines' hymn says, from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, on that mission there was about 10 times as many contractors as there were Marines.
Now, help me understand something. When a private firm like Blackwater contracts with the CIA or the State Department, do Blackwater civilian employees enjoy the same legal protections as government employees?
Well, first let's clarify. Rules of engagement are dictated by that customer, and if there's someone operating under some kind of diplomatic clearance, they would enjoy some sort of diplomatic protection, just like a government employee would. So when it comes to legal protections, it's there's some vagaries there. Typically, the private sector guys end up on the short end of that stick.
I would imagine so, because you might be ordered by your customer, let's say a division of the federal government, to perform an act which if you were an employee of the government, you might have legal protections that are clearly spelled out. But as an independent contractor, as a civilian carrying out those acts, you fall under the laws that govern the common man, don't you?
Well, correct.
Yes and no.
Yes and no. I mean, those are, war zones are a mix of a lot of different rules, policies, opinions, and it's a bit of a swirl. When we operated clearly under the rules of engagement dictated by our customer, who was the U.S. government, and presumably those authorities and protections would go both ways. But I guess when politics rears its ugly head, then different decisions get made.
Now, you've made statements that the U.S. military is inefficient and needs to go on a diet, and you point out that private military organizations can run better at a less cost, but obviously there's a limit to how much security a government can rely on for subcontractors to perform. Would you agree with that?
Correct. I mean, look, a national military has to exist to do offensive combat missions, and that should be their sole realm. But in the supporting positions, whether it's training or logistics support or aviation support or maintenance, there's a lot of role for the private sector to play, more of a role, and especially an efficient role. And I'll give you an example. One of the contracts my company performed, a competitively bid contract, was called VRTREP, vertical replenishment, and that's when you embark our helicopters and our crews aboard a U.S. Navy supply ship, and you'd fly from supply ship to warship, flying whatever beans, bullets, parts, whatever the Navy needed flown between the ships. Simple mission. But when we showed up to do that mission, we did it with 2 helicopters and 8 guys.
Wow.
We replaced the Navy, who was doing that job, with 2 helicopters and 35 guys doing the same mission. And for every 35 people they had deployed, they had probably 70 to 100 back in the States training or waiting to deploy. So on an apples-to-apples comparison, we were vastly cheaper.
Now, the analogy that you've used is that Blackwater is to the military what Federal Express and UPS have been to the U.S. Post Office. Is that right?
Well, citing that kind of helicopter example, when you have a free good, you tend to use a lot more of it. So the guy that in the Navy that said, I need 35 guys to do that job, he wasn't paying the payroll for all those 35 people.
That's right. And so on a person-by-person and dollar-by-dollar comparison, the private sector shows where the inefficiencies really are. We have to take a scheduled break. When we come back, we're going to find out what made Washington and the public suddenly turn on Blackwater. You're listening to the Costa Report.
Did you know that every day we create 2.5 quintillion bytes of data, and that 90% of the data in the world today has been created in the last 2 years alone? This data comes from everywhere, and it affects everyone. This data is big data. Big data is all data, and it's more than simply a matter of size. Big data represents an opportunity to uncover new insights, make your business more agile, and answer questions that were previously beyond your reach. IBM's Big Data platform uses sophisticated technologies and patented advanced analytics designed to complement your existing information infrastructure. The IBM Big Data platform allows you to get started quickly today and expand to address more complex problems tomorrow. It doesn't matter where you start, it matters that you start. Find out how IBM can help you turn big data into a competitive advantage by visiting ibm.com/big data today.
So here's a question for you. Is life getting easier or harder? Take the last 5 years, for example. Do things feel more complicated, more unwieldy, more unmanageable? If your answer is yes, then you're not alone. Technology is supposed to take care of this, but instead we find ourselves running on a treadmill that's going faster and faster every day. That's why I'm asking you to get a copy of The Watchman's Rattle, the first book that shows how complexity leads to gridlock, a confusion between facts and beliefs, and eventually failure. The Watchman's Rattle is the only book that explains why those who master complexity come out on top in business, in government, and in life. Go to RebeccaCosta.com and order your copy of The Watchman's Rattle now. That's RebeccaCosta.com. Find out why quick changing environments mean quick opportunities for success.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. So, who's going to do what? Flashlights?
Nowhere to be found.
Where to be found? Batteries?
Dead.
Great. Emergency supply kits?
Not packed.
No. What about blankets?
We have an old towel.
Good enough. Cell phones?
May not work.
Emergency water?
Not a drop.
And what about food?
Nope.
Perfect. We all know where we're meeting if we're separated, yeah?
The library. Aunt Joan's house.
The bus stop.
Great. And I'll be waiting here wondering where you all are. Sounds like we don't have a plan. Who's up for mini golf?
Winging it is not an emergency plan. Make sure your kids know what to do during an emergency. Who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information. A public service announcement brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Are you living paycheck to paycheck? Are your credit cards maxed out? Not paying some bills so you can take care of others? Or are you behind on the rent or utility bills? There is no better time than now to get your finances in order. The National Foundation for Credit Counseling, a nonprofit organization, offers a number of steps you can take to get yourself on the way to living debt-free. Track your spending for 1 month and record all your expenses, what kind and how much you spent. Use that to figure out where you can trim the fat. Look for low-cost alternatives to reduce expenses. Pack your lunch instead of buying it. Go to the library instead of the bookstore. When your credit card bills arrive, pay more and pay extra, exceeding the minimum payment. For more tips on how to recover from debt or get help in developing a budget, contact the NFCC to reach a certified counselor at 1-800-388-2227 or visit debtadvice.org. That's 1-800-388-2227 or visit debtadvice.org. A public service message from the NFCC.
Got a comment or a question? Visit Rebecca Costa's comments page at RebeccaCosta.com.
Welcome back to the Costa Report. I'm Rebecca Costa, and my guest today is the founder of Blackwater, Mr. Erik Prince. And before the break, we were talking about some of the operations Blackwater took over on behalf of the government and was able to operate much more efficiently. And I believe you were making the point that if you have unlimited resources, there's less need for efficiency. Is that right?
Sure. I mean, the simple analogy is if you brush your teeth at night, do you leave the water on or you turn it off? Mm-hmm. I guarantee you'd turn it off if it cost you $3 a gallon. But since it's almost a free good, you tend to leave the water run. And so, again, when the military has unlimited free people, they tend to use a lot more, and the costs go up.
Mm-hmm. Now, last year you released a tell-all book titled Civilian Warriors, where you point out that under Blackwater's watch, not one single American leader has ever been harmed. And recently you've said that you feel that had Blackwater been allowed to protect American personnel and embassies, the incident in Benghazi might have been prevented. Can you explain how that might have been prevented?
Sure. Between Iraq and Afghanistan, Blackwater did more than 100,000 missions. Again, no one under our care was killed or injured. We had the right people with the right training, the right equipment, and they did a very diligent job. Unfortunately, in Benghazi, you had a very weak preparation, depending on a local guard force that was unarmed and unvetted. Really didn't know who they were, who their loyalties were, and an adequate response package. So there was a cascading amount of failures, from ignoring the multiple attacks and intelligence in the area to even the right people that did not stand and fight. Thank goodness those two former SEAL contractors came over from the CIA annex and evacuated the other Americans from the consulate facility. If they hadn't, I believe there would have been dozens of Americans killed that night, because the terrorists that came didn't just come to kill the ambassador; they came to kill as many Americans as they could. And the two SEAL contractors left, literally disobeyed their superiors' orders, and went anyway, moving to the sound of the gunfire to extract those people.
Now, you have a theory about the planning of this attack on the U.S. Embassy and who perpetrated it. And according to you, it was much more organized than we were given the impression that it was.
Yes, indeed. There was plenty of advanced planning, and the fact that it was done on September 11th. It could imagine not just an attack there, but the Al-Qaeda battle flag was raised over the U.S. Embassy in Cairo. The American school in Tunisia was burned to the ground. And it was very much a pre-planned attack, very much organized. And Abu Khatallah, one of the terrorist leaders, is still on the loose in Benghazi, and no one's gone and got him yet.
So when you first heard the stories that this was a response to a YouTube video, what was your reaction?
I was...
I don't even know if I want to ask you that.
I was mighty skeptical of that to begin with. But, look, they're looking for a showpiece attack. Killing an American ambassador is a big deal.
Yes.
There's not been one killed since 1979 in Pakistan. So it's diplomatic security matters.
It was a trophy.
It was it was a very ugly way of making a trophy.
Yes. So one of the more disturbing revelations which has come forward is the fact that you participated in a secret CIA task force charged with killing terrorists, and your name was leaked to the press. And you feel pretty strongly that Leon Panetta had something to do with this leak. So I have to ask you, what motive would Panetta have to leak this information about the operation and your name?
I think politics. It's kind of unprecedented to leak a Knox name, true name, to a very leaky congressional committee. I have no beef with the agency, but I certainly have a beef with the director for leaking a true name asset. That's, to my knowledge, and I've talked to a lot of career intelligence officers, that's kind of unprecedented.
Why would someone leak a name? I mean, we're civilians listening to this program today. We're not Washington insiders. We don't understand why anybody would.
And I very clearly am not a Washington insider either. Proudly.
But you know how to think like them, and we don't. So why would anybody leak the name of an operation and someone who has been so productive and instrumental as you? It just somehow the motive isn't clicking in.
I think it was kind of pylon politics, and they were looking. There was such at that time there was such a almost a militant hatred of the previous administration, and looking to demonize any and all efforts from that administration, that it was one more kick they could give, I guess.
So this was a way of separating from the Bush administration by making Blackwater part of that administration's policies.
Yes, in some ways, And in some ways, there was other indispensable things that the company was doing that they very much continued doing.
Now, you gave the comparison to Valerie Plame, but you also point out in some ways this was much worse because a sensitive program was also revealed.
Well, yeah, and that kind of program, I don't know that there's a lot more sensitive than that.
Mm-hmm. And you also feel that you may have been targeted by the IRS. Do I have that right?
Sure. After the unfortunate event of Nisour Square in September of 2007, and then Congress starts coming after us, then the blizzard of subpoenas start from every federal agency you can imagine, and some you've never heard of, from the IRS to agriculture to labor to commerce to the State Department to every one of them. I mean, the agriculture was investigating how we ship dog food over. But a career.
So they just started piling on.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the career IRS agent, 25-year guy, said, "Man, I've handled a lot of high-profile cases before. I've never been under so much pressure to get someone as to get Erik Prince." And as some of our staff are making the rounds on the Hill, trying to explain what the company's doing and what we're not doing, one of the chiefs of staff of a Democratic congressman from Indiana said, "It doesn't matter what you guys do, we're going to ride you until you're out of business."
The real irony here, of course, is that your company spent so much time protecting these same people who were persecuting you.
Well, look, we were there to do a job. We were there to protect the diplomats and the Reconstruction people who were trying to...
But even so, that's kind of personal. I would take that personal. If I'm trying to protect you and you now portray me as an enemy and come after me, I don't know. I mean, maybe that's my Italian heritage. I take that personally.
Well, we were there in Iraq. We provided the means for Reconstruction people to get out to meetings to try to turn the lights on and try to make peace amongst the parties. And now, seeing the real tragedy for me is seeing that how far Iraq has slipped. The United States pulling out the way it did really turned the country over to the Iranians. Under Maliki, an Iranian asset at this point. So
yes, and we're now looking at that
nothing.
Same situation in Afghanistan, a country which depends entirely, their entire economy depends on the United States, and we're about ready to devastate that economy as well. And we have to take another break. Stay right where you are. We'll be right back with Erik Prince. You're listening to the Costa Report.
Hi, I'm Amy Tobin, cookbook author and culinary expert. Are you looking for ideas to create a more balanced meal plan? As one of the world's largest providers of fresh fruits and vegetables, Dole makes it easy to eat the right foods. From a wide variety of salad blends and all-natural salad kits to fresh-cut vegetables and a rainbow of your favorite fresh fruit, Dole delivers good nutrition naturally. But Dole goes beyond just offering healthy fruits and vegetables. Dole has their own Nutrition Institute that gives you the knowledge and tools you need to make smart choices about your nutrition and health. Visit www.dole.com for more information about the Dole Nutrition Institute. Be sure to sign up for their e-newsletter to receive delicious recipes, tips, and articles to help you make your meals the best they can be. Visit www.dole.com for more.
Take a look under your bed. Find stuff under there? What about jobs? No? Now try your basement. There's a pair of overalls that overall you're not so into anymore. A perfectly good laptop that hasn't seen your lap in months. And even more stuff. But still no jobs? Well, you really have both. See, stuff is defined as household articles considered as a group. Sometimes this stuff is no longer needed. Wait, no longer needed? That can't be right. Because remember those jobs you were looking for? Those are really needed. And they're the stuff inside your stuff. Even inside that winter coat that moved with you to Phoenix. Our job is to unlock those jobs. And it starts when you donate your stuff to your local Goodwill. Here's how we do it. When you donate to Goodwill, we sell your stuff to provide job training for people right here in your community. So just by teaming up with Goodwill, you help create jobs. And isn't that worth parting with the leftover keytar from your 80s cover band? Goodwill. Donate stuff, create jobs. Find your nearest donation center at goodwill.org. A message from Goodwill and the Ad Council.
This is the story of Daniel, who was born 2 months early. He weighed 1 pound, 7 ounces. His lungs weren't ready. His heart wasn't ready. His brain wasn't ready. At the hospital, the nurses said Daniel was a fighter, and they would do all they could to help him. The doctor said even with the best care, Daniel may never walk. He may never see. He may never learn. Daniel's parents spent night after night at the hospital, watching his every breath, holding his tiny hands, and looking for signs that he was growing stronger. At home, his parents looked around Daniel's empty nursery, at the quiet toys and the still rocker, and they hoped that one day they could sit in that rocking chair and tell this story to their very healthy son. Daniel's is just one of the more than 500,000 stories of babies born prematurely last year, but there's hope for a happy ending. The March of Dimes is funding the research and programs to stop premature birth. You can help bring more babies home healthy. Learn how at marchofdimes.com. Working together for stronger, healthier babies.
The next episode of Recipes for Disaster.
So we've got our neighbor Paul coming over tonight for a barbecue, which is why I prepared a delicious lemon rosemary steak marinade from my special collection of old family recipes. To make sure the steaks are extra, extra, extra tender, I left them marinating out on the counter overnight, just like Nana used to.
Maria may mean well, but without food safety, it never ends well. Always thaw or marinate foods in the refrigerator at 40 degrees Fahrenheit or below, or you could make your friends and family really sick. Maria's neighbor Paul didn't think twice about the steak he ate until he was presenting his company's financial forecast to the board. That's when a sudden bout of food poisoning made it explicitly clear that profits weren't the only thing on the rise. Watch Recipes for Disaster at foodsafety.gov. You'll learn the right steps as Maria does everything wrong. Brought to you by the USDA, HHS, and the Ad Council.
Take a moment to see Rebecca's video pick of the week. Go to YouTube and subscribe to the Rebecca Costa YouTube channel.
Welcome back to the Costa Report. I'm Rebecca Costa, and if you're just joining us, my guest today is Erik Prince. And before the break, we were talking about the conditions we've left behind in Iraq. Do you think we're in danger of leaving behind favorable conditions for terrorists to come back in Afghanistan? Well, what's your feeling about our withdrawal there?
Look, if the United States pulls out completely out of Afghanistan, I would say the government lasts maybe a year to 18 months. Mm-hmm. One of the, a real basic element that the United States has failed to do, and this falls really at the feet of USAID and the State Department, was all the economic development stuff that was supposed to be going on hasn't been going, and the energy potential in the country, from hydro to mining to oil and gas, has really been missed.
There's no economy there.
There's really not an economy. It is a welfare-based economy based on transfer payments from Western nations to prop up the government. Mm-hmm. Second, the armed forces, although there's been some brave, good units built amongst the Afghan army, they really lack the logistics and combat support, and certainly air support, that they need to have any kind of home team advantage against a still very capable Taliban force. All of that combines to making the country really unravel quite quickly if the U.S. were to pull back. I would say the North would remain more stable longer, but certainly the South, the Pashtun area of the country would really come unglued.
Yeah, I think most experts would agree with you on that point. Now, I guess once you realized you were going to be thrown under the bus for political expediency, the invitation to move to Abu Dhabi and establish an 800-member force to protect pipelines and prevent insurrection, that must have looked pretty good.
Well, actually, I was invited to come out there to do some other consulting. The media has mischaracterized all my roles in that. I gave some ideas on counter-piracy as well. That unit went on to do, I think, an excellent job of ending piracy. You don't hear much of Somali piracy anymore.
No, we don't.
Because there was a land-based police unit that went after the pirates' logistics bases, and very quietly went about their business and did a good job of ending piracy. But the last couple of years, I started a private equity fund investing in energy, mining, agriculture, logistics kind of opportunities throughout Africa. It is the last great frontier, and good places to invest.
Now, when you were training these special forces, for example, to quell the Somali piracy or in Abu Dhabi, how was that different from your training here in the United States?
Well, I didn't do any of the training or organize any of it, but just giving ideas as to how a structure like that could work. Look, building indigenous forces, I'll give you a good example. My old company built the Afghan border police.
Yes.
And it was a very satisfying mission, taking guys, most of whom couldn't read. And we had to alter the training to even do, intro to toilet use and running water and the really basic things that we take for granted. But it was so satisfying to go to the graduations because they were so proud, because it was the first time they've ever been part of anything excellent in their life. Mm-hmm. Because for 8 weeks, their instructors knew what they were teaching. The light switch worked. There was fuel in the vehicle. The battery was charged. There was ammunition for the guns. All those basic things that you need to make something worked. And so these guys had never gone to school really. Were at least we brought them from no capability up to doing very capable small unit tactics and law enforcement work.
There's a great sense of pride.
Absolutely, and you know what? The honor man. They absolutely wore that with a badge of honor. And we built the Narcotics Interdiction Unit as well, which is a counter-drug force in Afghanistan. They very actively raided the heroin labs around the country and actually made the largest counter-narcotics bust in history. Guys in Colorado will hate me, but it was 262 metric tons of hash.
Oh.
I think it was the street value was estimated to be about $1.2 billion. But we had women in that class, and it seems they had probably about 600 years of pent up anger against men because they'd come to class, they'd come in from town in their burqa, and the burqa would come off, and they'd be there in their camis, and they'd be doing the handcuffing and the baton work and shooting and all the rest, and they were great. In fact, one of the early women graduates we had ended up being the honor graduate. She was fantastic.
Well, this is something I can say, but you cannot, and that is I can't think of someone who would be better qualified to put on the front lines than an angry woman. Now, I don't want in any way compare building forces overseas to the plight of Edward Snowden, but I know you have some strong feelings as to Snowden's recent problems and the fact that he came out about the NSA's overreach. Were there any points in time when you were working for the CIA or the State Department where you faced a Snowden-like dilemma and you thought, well, somebody really ought to know something about this?
I wouldn't say during, but I would certainly say after. The CIA or the intelligence community routinely oversteps its mandate to not spy on Americans. And I personally experienced that, and it's wrong, it's disconcerting, and it makes you wonder what's the advantage of being an American citizen anymore.
But not just Americans, right? I mean, we've been caught doing a lot of illegal surveillance overseas as well.
Look, intelligence services exist to collect on other nations, okay? Mm-hmm. But when the NSA is spending as much time as they are collecting on Americans, you got to draw the line. And I know, I think there's extremely weak congressional oversight. Most of the members of the committee are routinely snowed, not Snowden, snowed by the intelligence communities, by the intelligence bureaucrats. And when you turn people loose with tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars, there's a lot of overreach going on, and it's just not American anymore.
At some point, Congress had an opportunity to vote on legislation which would permit whistleblowers to come forward in a protected way. And it was interesting that the NSA and the CIA are the agencies that blocked that. They felt that there was too much opportunity for lawsuits to come forward. So I guess if you don't pave a legitimate way for people to come forward with malfeasance, you're going to wind up with a Snowden type of situation, aren't you?
Look, I don't know if Snowden is a hero or a
traitor.
Or a
Who
traitor.
knows? Who knows?
But I think he's certainly played a very important public service role of bringing some of this to light, because it's gone way too far.
Yes, it has. I'm one of the few journalists, I think, that suspends any judgment because I can't believe what other journalists report. So I have no idea if Edward Snowden is a hero or he's a traitor. What I do know is if you don't create a legitimate pathway for people to be able to bring these kinds of things to light, you're going to wind up with uncontrolled situations. And I think that is a great security risk to the United States.
Well, and I think the other thing that the intelligence communities do routinely is hide behind classification.
Mm-hmm.
And
now, how do they do that?
Because anything and everything they'll say is classified and can't be discussed by normal people.
Mm-hmm.
And they
so if it's classified, you're putting yourself at risk.
My point is they make anything and everything classified. For example,
so you can't talk about anything.
No. For example, in my book, okay, I submitted my book for the Publication Review Board, as I had to because we used to do work for the CIA, and they whacked 55 pages from the book. And
only 55.
But the thing I really scratched my head about was they actually blacked out quotes where I was quoting the director of CIA from a New York Times report. So literally quoting the New York Times what the director of CIA said, and they said that was classified yet. So that's where I have, there's got to be some rationale.
Right, there has to be. Now we have to take our last break, but we'll be back with Erik Prince. You're listening to the Costa Report.
50 years ago, Dr. Martin Luther King delivered his famous I Have a Dream speech. But something you may not know is that Dr. King was represented by the world's foremost speaking agency, the American Program Bureau. The American Program Bureau has a courageous history of representing luminaries, entertainers, and motivators from all backgrounds. From Ronald Reagan, Richard Branson, and Mikhail Gorbachev to Jon Stewart, Michael Douglas, and Desmond Tutu. From A-list celebrities to best-selling authors, cutting-edge business leaders, and the greatest minds in academia, the American Program Bureau has speakers to fit every venue and every budget. When corporations, conferences, schools, and community organizations need an expert speaker, they turn to the American Program Bureau to help them craft an event that will be remembered long afterwards. To inquire about a speaker for your next engagement, contact the American Program Bureau at 800-225-4575 or visit our website at apbspeakers.com. The American Program Bureau, making history one speech at a time.
When it comes to Pinot Noirs, there are very few winemakers more knowledgeable than Scott Caraccioli. So tell us, Scott, what makes a good Pinot Noir?
I think a lot of it starts in the vineyard with having an area that can grow the Pinot Noir grape to the most optimal maturation point in the grape's lifespan. And here on the Central Coast, in the Santa Lucia Highlands specifically, we have the ability with the cool climate to have long growing days, but not getting too hot with the coastal fog coming in to cool it down. And it really leads to a perfectly deep, rich, complex Pinot Noir flavor profile when starting to build your Pinot Noir. And from there, a lot of it is just adding the small little nuances of the winemaking that really express the grape in the most positive light.
Absolutely. I'll tell you, once you have a Caraccioli Cellars Pinot Noir, you just want more.
I was facing foreclosure. I was desperate for help.
I paid them $1,500 and never got the help they promised.
Don't let the fear of losing your home make you the victim of a loan modification scam. Remember these facts to protect yourself. It's illegal for most companies to charge fees in advance, no matter how small. No company can guarantee they can modify your loan or stop a foreclosure. And never send your mortgage payment to anyone but your lender. The easiest way to avoid a scam? Don't pay for a loan modification. Get free help from a HUD-approved counseling agency now. To learn more, report a scam, or find out if you've been a victim, call 1-888-995-HOPE. or visit loanscamalert.org. That's 1-888-995-4673 and loanscamalert.org.
Know the signs. Get the facts.
It's pouring rain. It's real dark outside. Your heart starts beating really, really fast. You've never done anything so hard in your life. This is boot camp. This is the real thing now. It's such extreme pain, you don't understand how you can finish. I began to feel that there was no way I was ever going to have my title, U.S. Marine. It takes special inner strength, courage, and desire to do this. I was just thinking, I'm so close. I'm so close. And when I finished, I was like, I'm done. I did it. The moment I will never forget is when this drill instructor that I admire so much comes up to me straight in front of me, put her arm on my shoulder and said, "Good morning, Marine."
PFC Summer Volkman became a Marine. Can you? Visit Marines.com or call 1-800-MARINES. The few, the proud, the Marines.
Join Rebecca Costa right now on Facebook. Search facebook.com/Rebecca Costa.
Welcome back to the Costa Report. I'm Rebecca Costa, and my guest today is Erik Prince. And you were saying that you had to get approval for your book, Civilian Warriors, and 55 pages were edited out along with quotes that were already published by the New York Times. So apparently the CIA doesn't make a distinction between information that's already public and undisclosed sensitive information.
I think it's a microcosm of how things tend to be overclassified and overblanketed, and it's certainly frustrating. I'm sure whether it's a whistleblower or someone who's trying to correct the organization and keep it focused on its core missions, I can only imagine the pit of bureaucracy they have to wallow in.
Now, do you consider yourself a whistleblower?
No. I don't know that I blew any whistles in the book. I really wrote the book to set the record straight, to make it clear what we did as a company, how we did it, why we did it, that we were, operating under competitively bid contracts with very detailed rules of engagement, what we must do and how we must do it.
Yes.
And I never really set out to be a defense contractor. I was kind of an accidental tourist, building a facility after I got out of the SEAL teams. Because I love the SEAL teams and I wanted to stay connected to that group of people. And, one thing led to another. When Columbine happened and the USS Cole was blown up and then 9/11 happened, we kept saying yes when the government called, and we performed, and we ran hard. And then to be, as I've said before, blowtorched for the sake of politics is kind of unnerving. So I guess it's also a cautionary tale for the next entrepreneur dumb enough to devote all his personal resources to the service of his country.
Well, let's just say you were entrepreneurial from a young age. You saw a need, and you worked to fill it. I work here in Silicon Valley quite a bit, and I don't see a huge distinction between whether you set up a private military or you set up a new laptop computing company. To me, entrepreneurs are driven by solving problems. Now, I don't know if you know this, but during the Vietnam War, I spent a great deal of my time in Japan, Laos, Thailand, and Cambodia. My father worked for Air America, which, as you know, was a CIA operation, and was also slapped with the label of being a mercenary organization. But countries like Laos wanted to remain neutral, and in the meantime, the Khmer Rouge, Pathet Lao, they were on the move. So the CIA set up military operations, which were at arm's length. They called them Continental Airlines, Air America, SAT. I guess my question for you is this. What's the difference between the CIA setting up for-hire militaries or subcontracting to Blackwater? Because I don't see one.
Look, again, anytime you're doing a counterinsurgency or a difficult mission somewhere, the U.S. military is the finest in the world at big conventional operations, like they did when they rolled from the Kuwaiti border throughout Iraq. They conquered the Iraqi military, but now when you stop that and you try to turn into a big constabulary, a big counterinsurgency force, they can't retask that well and get organized. And so the private sector can take some experienced people with the right backgrounds, taking some maybe not state-of-the-art equipment, but adequate equipment, and putting it out there and making it work. And whether it's supporting the government in Laos or supporting the government of Afghanistan against the Taliban, there's lots of ways the private sector can certainly add value. I tell some, I think, some interesting stories in the book about rescues we've done in throughout Africa, about some of those missions. It's really a story about the proven veterans that have already served America once that, again, volunteer, and they go serve again. We were the ultimate volunteer organization because we couldn't stop loss our people. We couldn't press gang them. They volunteered every day to do that mission, and they did it well.
Well, that's really the story of Air America as well. I remember my father, once they had emptied cargo, landing on these dirt runways to evacuate Mau tribesmen who could not protect themselves any longer. And just cramming them into the plane, standing up like sardines, and to get them into the city capital, Vientiane. And these were, in my view, they were heroes. They were true heroes. They risked their life every day. They were in these countries illegally. If a plane went down, no one ever knew that those Americans died in Laos. There is no record of it.
And I'm a big fan of William Donovan, the founder of the OSS.
Yes.
Really the founder of American intelligence capability. And, he set the precedent of using civilians that had the right skills and courage, knowledge, language, area of familiarity to innovate and to have a creative effort against our country's enemies. And, he put an intelligence service together in about a year to a year and a half to take on not just the Nazis, but the Japanese, the Soviets, the NKVD, truly a global war very quickly. And he couldn't have done that without a lot of civilians that stepped up and did what they could.
Isn't it interesting, the connection between having an entrepreneurial spirit, being able to react and respond very quickly, assess a situation, and move into action, how that plays not only in business, but it's the same skill set applied in a private situation like a private military?
Well, you're probably right. In business, you don't have perfect information.
Yes.
You don't know what the market's going to do tomorrow. You have to figure out. You gather your data points as best you can, and you make your decision and hope for the best, and then adjust, because no plan ever really survives first contact anyway. And you have to keep adjusting, and you have to be willing to fail. You almost have to have a wildcatter's heart, like those guys that struck oil in Texas. You have to be willing to hit some dry wells because sometimes you hit it big.
Well, I am the daughter of a wildcatter, so I will say that I am infected with that same spirit. And, boy, if you grow up in that environment, it's hard to shake it out of your DNA.
Well, I wish I had been a wildcatter. I wish, looking back, I wish I had not started a government services firm and instead just gone off and drilled oil. Because
how are you taking this experience that you had at Blackwater into your investments in Africa?
Well, I was actually just named chairman of a company, a Hong Kong publicly listed company, and I have a mandate to build out an aviation and secure logistics capability on the continent of Africa to assist energy companies, mining companies, infrastructure companies that are building a railway, a road, a port, and help smooth the ingress of their people and parts and their equipment as they're setting up their operations, and then making sure the offtake gets to market safely. So we're not a PMC by any means, but really the logistics integrator that specializes in making it happen in rough places. So certainly the experience and knowledge that we've had working in active war zones will make it, I think, a bit easier to operate into some of the weather, political, criminal uncertainties that may exist from time to time in Africa.
Well, having come back recently from speaking at the G20 Summit on Africa infrastructure, I can tell you, Godspeed. You cannot get there soon enough. They need a lot of help right now, and help which they are not getting because, in my view, they are relying on old infrastructure, brick and mortar, those kinds of things, when they really need to adopt do Mexico's telephone strategy, leapfrog to the next generation technology, and I think you'll be able to bring that to them. That is our program for today, but before we say goodbye, I want to thank you for your service to our country. Thank you for taking time to be with us today, Mr. Prince.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
If your station is leaving us after this hour and you have a question or a comment to make about today's program, you can email me at RebeccaCosta.com or send me a note on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and let me know what you thought about our conversation with Mr. Prince today and how you feel about the role of a private military in our country. Are you in favor, against, and were some of your perceptions about Mr. Prince changed today? And if you missed the full interview with Prince or any of our other guests, you can download previous episodes of the Costa Report from our website, Apple, iTunes, Podbean, and our new YouTube channel. And I also want to remind you that if you haven't already ordered your first edition hardcover of The Watchman's Rattle, go to our website and do it right now. We're almost out of hardcovers, and the paperback is, as you know, already in its 8th printing. The autographed first editions make a nice addition to your book collection. They also make a wonderful customized gift. If you have a birthday or thank you or anniversary gift that you need, use that opportunity to order something personalized and insightful. All of the proceeds from the sale of the books go to expanding the Costa Report throughout the United States. So if you've grown tired of the divisive ranting and raving that you hear every day on the radio and on television, join us in bringing partisan-free quality journalism back to the airwaves. Let's put programming that's informative and tolerant back on the air again. All you have to do is go to RebeccaCosta.com. That's my name.com. My guest next week is the president of the RAND Corporation, Mr. Michael Rich. He'll be here to give us an insider's look at a company that analyzes data that can be used to forge partisan-free public policy. Don't miss Michael Rich from the RAND Corporation next week, right here on the only news program which puts policy ahead of politics. Now stay tuned for another hour of Straight Talk Radio. You're listening to the Costa Report.